Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 4, Episode 1 of Apple TV's Slow Horses, entitled Identity Theft. Man, I'm so glad this show is back. Like, I'm pretty sure all 3 seasons have made my top 10 or honorable mentions, and while it's not the best show on TV, as in like number 1, it's arguably the most consistent, and I'm pretty good with saying it's inarguably the most consistent. Like, you know you're not going to get filler or get bored. 6 episodes every season, nice and quick. It's based on a book series, so the writers aren't necessarily required to create or have to freestyle. They just really need to adapt what's already there, and they've got an exceptional outline from which to craft. And like Only Murders in the Building, this is one of those shows where it just has a really endearing cast. So it's refreshing to have a show returning consistently on a yearly basis that you know is not going to let you down and is always going to be among the better things on television that year. To that point, this was a very solid opener for this season. It was entirely set up, but it was compelling setup. And with that tight 6-episode season, you know it's off and running right away next week. Typically, these Slow Horses seasons do start off with a murder, and this one is no different, starting off with a Rivers murder. But just prior to that, a guy named Robert Winters, and that may or may not be his real name, he drives a car bomb into a shopping center. Now, I want to take a moment here to talk about Roddy. And I'm not... Sometimes I'm good with transitions. This was not one of them. But I just want to take a moment to talk about Roddy, because this bombing happens near Roddy because he's at some chicken joint that Lamb told him that everybody was going to be at. This scene, it was moderately funny, whatever. Your typical Roddy scene. But I'm beginning to wonder if he's ever going to be more than comic relief. Like, I feel like every other character on the show has gotten their own little miniature story arc, right down to Marcus and Shirley last season. What was that name Lamb gave them that I consistently used for them? Little and large? Yeah, anyway. I'm going to let that go this season. Go back to calling them Marcus and Shirley unless Lamb gives me another great name. Anyway, I'll probably mention at some point in my coverage every season of this show that I'm hoping for Roddy to get an arc because I want to learn more about him. And I read an article about this episode, something I rarely do prior to recording a video, and it talked about Roddy being just that. But that moment when he was unplugging River's computer because he died, the article made it seem like that was just Roddy being Roddy, and he didn't really give a fuck about River. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I saw pain in his face, and being, nonchalant about it and being typical Roddy is how he copes. And that's interesting to me, man. Like, I want to learn more about this guy. Like, maybe I'm tripping, but I feel like this actor can do more than they're giving him. But if that's true, why hasn't Roddy gotten at least some sort of miniature arc? Marcus has surely got one, and they're newer to the cast than he is. Anyway, like I said, I could be tripping, but I wanted to put that out there in case anybody of relevance sees this and is like, hey... Sorry, man. Hey, guy who plays Roddy. why don't they give you a story arc? Because I want to fucking know, man. I want him to get some more stuff to do other than just being an asshole. Anyway, like I said, I could be tripping. Let's move on. So River and Louisa, they're out for drinks, and I immediately felt like there was some sexual tension there. River starts to make it sound like he wants to take their relationship to something beyond just being co-workers, and Louisa jumps at this, surprisingly so, and interestingly so. Only to learn that River wanted to have a serious conversation about his grandfather, the High Sparrow. River shares that he's gotten worse, he being his grandfather, David Cartwright, saying the last time that they saw each other, his grandfather didn't even recognize him for 10 minutes, and he kept telling him about his grandson, River. Now, I want to take another pause here. This will be a much better transition than the Roddy one. I want us to put on our detective hats when it comes to this whole thing with River, right? Hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms. If you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't, I am an acquired taste, but you can join the Patreon where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today, Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel, or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there since it's the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not going to lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film, and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. So when this conversation took place between him and Louisa in the episode, it felt perfectly plausible because it did seem last season like David was starting to lose a little bit of his mental faculties. He had that moment where he misremembered a location or something like that. And I remember noting that moment in the video that I did for that episode. So when we start this new season and River is like, I want to confide in you that I'm worried about my grandfather because he's slipping even more mentally. Of course I'm going to buy that, right? That's not going to raise any red flags. Makes sense. But given what takes place in this episode, and yes, I'm still going to talk about it in a little bit more detail than this, and River clearly having some sort of agenda and having faked his death to go to France to tackle that agenda, I'm wondering if he was bullshitting Louisa a bit to sort of like validate the idea that he would, once he is dead, that he is dead, and make the investigation into his death a little bit less aggressive. So let me explain. Say, for instance, he doesn't have this conversation with Louisa at all, and the events play out exactly the same. People are going to be far more suspicious of a man with David Cartwright's reputation at MI5 killing his own grandson. But Rivers already planted the seed in Louisa's mind that David's so bad that he doesn't even recognize his own grandson sometimes. He mentions details that apply specifically to this what ends up being this fake murder, like he sleeps with a gun by him. I don't know if he said sleeps, but he always has a gun at his side now. So when this fake murder happens, it's like, oh, well, he was dealing with dementia, and River told me he didn't recognize him last time they met, and River told me he's been extra paranoid lately, sleeping with guns, and now you get a lot less serious of an investigation into what happened, a lot more buy-in on David having done it, way more than you would have gotten otherwise. I think you still get an investigation, but River essentially makes his own murder feel a lot more plausible than it should, which at minimum buys him time in France. The only thing that's giving me trouble wrapping my head around this theory is that it kind of suggests David isn't as bad as River made him out to be, but then we see David exhibiting some pretty troubling symptoms ourselves when he's walking back to his house. But here's the thing. What if David and River are in on this together to solve whatever it is that River's got going on in France? Like, the behavior we saw from David, that could have all been show. And River it could have been show if him and River know that someone is coming after them and believes that David is on the doorstep of senility. Sorry, I struggle to get that thought out. But the fact that someone who is not River knew that it was the move to pretend to be River, that's a pretty big clue too, I think. Like, David and River could be working together to get this perception out there that David's losing his mind a little bit, draw out whoever this is that David ended up shooting, and that could have been like when he's walking to his house, the whole thing, like, I don't remember what he was saying, but that could all be part of the plan. If David is also in on it, then that makes even more sense that he would intentionally shoot this guy in the face to make him not recognizable, and all of this together would allow River to be able to go to France virtually unbothered, at least until, Lamb starts to pick up on something or whatever. But like I said, at minimum, it buys River some time. And I don't know about you guys, but that moment when Lamb was looking at River's body and gives the positive ID, the look on his face read less like, oh, this is River and that bothers me, more like, I know this isn't River, but I also know to pretend like it is while I figure out what the fuck is going on. But taking a quick diversion from the narrative, I do want to talk a little bit about the new characters that we meet for this season in this episode. First, we meet Emma Flight. She's Duffy's replacement. Apparently, per Lamb, she's an upgrade from Duffy due to not being, brain dead and something else. We also meet Claude Whalen, who is apparently who has taken the first desk job that I don't know. I thought that was supposed to be Taverner's job, but she might as well be first desk because she's doing all the work and he seems pretty inept. I imagine we'll get a pretty good story about how he came into this job. And then lastly, we meet a new member of Slough House, this guy J.K. Coe, who as of right now is just a total weirdo who doesn't say shit, meaning that he's destined to be incredibly relevant in the very near future. Okay, so back to the narrative. And Diana sends a team to this Robert Winters guy's crib, the guy who did the shopping center bombing, because he had a video where he promised his brothers would continue to do his work. The place is empty until one of the forensics guys pulls back the curtains. They're lined with grenades. So now that's 2 successful bombings here, or grenadings, as I like to say. Lamb goes to meet with Standish because, like I said, he doesn't believe that River is dead. And while there, we learn that he has yet to sign some necessary paperwork for authorizing her. Oh, I can't say firing, but authorizing her quitting? Sure. Yeah, we'll go with that. Authorizing her quitting. And Lamb learns that River was previously at Standish's place, so Standish knows something. And then David is currently there. And if my theory is right, I imagine that we'll learn from David in the next episode about all of this being some sort of setup. Side note about this scene. Lamb pieces together that Standish knows something by how few questions she asks about River's death and how unaffected she seems to be by the news. He gets her to ask where it happened, and and Lamb is like, in the bathtub, just like old times. And it took me a second, but I was like, yo, that's a shot at Charles' partner, the dude that Standish had been going on about all 3 seasons about this guy's death. Like, the best place to end this video is on a moment that was pure Lamb. Like, he knows how she felt about Charles' partner. He's the one who did it, and he rubbed it in her face that Charles was a traitor, and that's what led up to her quitting in the first place. And then he just casually just makes a joke about this guy being dead in the bathtub. What a guy Lamb is. But on that note, let me know what you thought in the comments, and until next week, peace.